Kane Archer has committed to Scott Frost and McKenzie Milton at UCF. What does our resident recruiting expert have to say about the young man and whether he can spin it?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. Joining me, as he does from time to time, is my good friend Brian Smith from Locked On the Portal to break down UCF QB commit Kane Archer. On today's show, we're going to talk about his film and how he compares to maybe some other prospects out there, past or present. Also, we're going to talk about whether he is the best fit for Scott Frost and McKenzie Milton's system. Let's start at the top here. You had a chance to review the film. I texted you as soon as he committed. I said, you got to take a look at this kid for me, Brian. Tell me what you think about Kane Archer. When I watched this film, I was impressed. I think he has an impressive arm. He seems to be able to make every throw that they're going to need him to make at the college level. What did you see when you watched the film?
Very confident and very, very cerebral. He doesn't just force it. He'll take his time. If he's got a pocket, he'll wait. A lot of young quarterbacks will jump out of the pocket even if it's not collapsing. That drives me crazy. Archer's not that way at all. And again, he can really spin it, like you said. Very accurate. It's consistent. He can throw the level 2 ball in between the safety and the linebacker. He throws it nicely down the field. He'll lead his receiver. All the little things. And then what really surprised me, you just keep rolling through the film, Mike. There were a few plays there later on where he could stop and start. Like, he made guys look really bad in space.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't see that coming. Like, he's running. He could go fast. It's one thing to hit the hammer and just go. It's another to put a stop and watch a guy blow by you. God gifts people differently that can do that. He's got that ability. So, yes, he fits Frost's offense. Before we even get into that, like, there's a million different things we can talk about there. But he is an all-around quarterback that is, for the modern game, he's 6 foot, give or take, 190, 200 pounds. He looks like a spread quarterback that you would see at UCF. Pretty much the short answer.
You know, when I watched the film, the other thing that stood out to me was rolling out of the pocket and throwing on the run. He doesn't lose a lot of accuracy. He was able to hit guys rolling out to his right on the run. And which is really important in today's game, the ability to be able to create big plays, impact plays. His deep ball looked really, really good, hitting guys in stride, running down the field. What did you think about his ability to be able to create with his arm?
I was surprised at how accurate he was when he just quote unquote flicked it. Like, if he had somebody on his tail and he couldn't just set his feet without getting blasted, and that's going to happen at all levels. You sometimes have got to be able to make a throw that is quote unquote off platform, as the saying goes. He would change his arm angle. He would change velocity. The distance didn't really matter. He's kind of like that jump shooter that the 3-point line's 22 feet or whatever, but if they're inside the building, you got to be on him. He's that guy because he can hit it from way downtown. He's very, very accurate, and he's pretty much got to be one of the more annoying guys in Arkansas to play against because there were a few plays where the defense was in the right spot, and he still made really, really quality throws. So tip of the cap to him, number one. And number two, when teams made mistakes, this is probably more important. You see this at the college level even more than you do at the pro level. There's a mistake, there's a bust, or somebody's on a guy that they can't really cover. Let's not make it difficult. The old KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. He smoked them. You know, you get a running back on a safety or something on a wheel route or a linebacker or something, whatever. He just killed him with it. So it wasn't always the first read. And I still come back to that. I think above the shoulders, Archer is a kid that I really liked because sometimes the first and second option wasn't there and he didn't panic.
Yeah.
So even if he had a guy coming in on him, he would wait. He would escape the pocket. If he had to throw it down the field, fine. If he threw it short, he didn't care. He didn't put the ball in harm's way just because his first and second option was not available.
We had a chance to sit down one-on-one with Kane Archer, and I can tell you, his kind of exudes what you're talking about, a guy who doesn't panic, somebody who is just steady in the face of adversity and can think when under pressure. That's what you just described to me there. When the pressure is on, does he fold? Does he panic? Does he make a bad play? Does he force a throw? Or does he go through his reads, find that second option quick. If it's not there, move to that third option. You know, like I know at this level, there are few quarterbacks that possess the ability to be able to get to their third and fourth read in a timely fashion, right? And listening to, guys like, that like Peyton Manning talk, where they talk about how they're off of their first read sometimes before the ball is snapped based on what the defense is showing them, saying, hey, look, this guy is going to be covered. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. And that's how I get to my 4 sometimes. Kane Archer, like you said, above right here, man. He seems to have it together. Before we move on, I just want to make sure I reiterate some of his stats for our listeners. His junior year, he threw for 3,880 yards, for 57 touchdowns against 2 interceptions, Brian, and an 81% completion percentage. He was deadly accurate with the football, which is crazy. And he was no slouch running the ball either. He had 795 yards rushing on 81 carries, another 10 touchdowns on the ground, 67 total touchdowns in his junior season. How does a guy like this, you follow recruiting, you follow these guys. Answer this for me. How does a guy like this, some competition he's playing there in Arkansas, move up the recruiting rankings? How do the people evaluating look at Kane Archer and say, I know he's not playing the best competition week in and week out, but this is a guy that can really play and he deserves to be ranked a little higher?
The biggest thing for somebody like him is to go to Elite 11 camps, go to Under Armour camps, and just get out there in the 7-on-7 circuit. Arkansas is not that well respected of a high school state. It's not that great a competition. We all know that. He just happens to live there. So you play your high school season the way it is, no big deal. It's the off season that's the key. And he's been ranked pretty high by, like, ESPN has him like the 11th quarterback or something like that. So he must have went to one of the camps, or Under Armour wouldn't have done that because the ESPN guys run them. So that pretty well makes that clear. And he's also a guy that needs to find a way to, just promote himself on social media, clips, highlights, stuff like that. But it's really getting out there because most scouts, especially at quarterback, they want to see a kid live before they put him like in a top 10 or top 15. Yours truly included. It's different because there are certain kids, they live Florida, Georgia, Texas, California. They're going to get more eyeballs because that's where the scouts live. So usually those 4 states have the most scouts by a mile. That's probably never going to change. So you got to find a way to get on the road and you got to find a way to promote yourself on social media.
Look, getting into those camps, you've heard it here, young athletes get to those camps in the summer. If you are not playing elite high school competition, they want to see how you stack up versus your peers. And at these camps, they do a good job of creating pressure situations for them while they're competing with their fellow quarterbacks to see how these guys do under pressure. Kane Archer, I'm looking forward to tracking his senior season. He tracked in camp for UCF, which, he reiterated, he said, look, man, I'm not flipping on one of these guys that flips my commitment. I took my time with this. I committed to these guys. I love their vision. I'm locked in. I'm going to go play my senior season, and I'm going to get graduated and into camp in January there for Scott Frost and McKenzie Milton. Well, who does he compare to at the college level? We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs, the intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans, their mind, atmosphere you must experience live, and this year's matchups are already delivering. If you want in, Game Time makes it easy and fast to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. I love the seat view option. It's something that really sells me on this. And, the NFL schedule just dropped. So you can best believe it's time to start looking at your favorite games for that NFL season and making sure you can get your favorite seat as low as $100, actually. So, look, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, low prices, guaranteed. Game Time. Brian, how does Kane Archer compare to some of his peers, particularly at the college level, past or present? Who does he remind you of when you watch his game? He appears to be a dual threat quarterback, but as you noted, he's not afraid to sit in that pocket and go through his reads. How would you classify Kane Archer? Would you classify him as a dual threat or a pocket passer with some athletic ability? And who would you compare him to by that?
Well, I mean, he's got a little bit of Dylan Gabriel to his game. That's a former UCF guy that I covered when I was covering UCF because of his ability to feather the ball down the field in between defenders. As a runner, I'm trying to figure out the best way. I'm looking at a list right now from last year. He's a stocky kid. He's probably 195, 200 pounds, I'd guess, give or take, from last year's film. He may be bigger now. I don't know. But he can stop and start so well. I don't want to say just extend plays. Like, he's dynamic. He can make some plays. Now, he's not going to run a 4.3 or something like that, but he's really athletic. So somebody that has some movement skills, it'll cause you some problems. A little bit of Rocco Becht in terms of his frame. Rocco's got that powerful frame. Like, he's a strong kid, plays at Iowa State. He's a little bit like him. But he's probably a better runner than Rocco. So I think that's one of the reasons Scott wanted it, because they're going to run some RPO now. They're going to spin it. They're going to do those things, but especially inside the 10, inside the 15, this is a kid that, again, above the shoulders, he's smart enough. And that's one of the reasons Rocco's playing well at Iowa State. Sometimes you just got to hand it off. And sometimes it's fade ball, whatever. You have to be able to process above all else if you're going to be an elite quarterback. There's no shortcut. And right now he does a really good job. And I know the competition's Arkansas high school, but it's child's play to him. And that's important. When you're going against teams that you should beat up on, you should go out there and smoke them and throw them for 81%. I don't give a crap what level of competition you're playing. That is insanity. So, and hats off to the guys he's throwing to. They're obviously hauling it in when he gets it to them. A lot of teams have quarterbacks that get mad because they don't have anybody to catch. His high school squad's pretty good at doing that.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out on film to me was ball placement. Although those guys are hauling it in, he's making it as easy as possible for those guys to just catch the ball and then use all their athletic ability, getting upfield and juking the next guy. I mean, you and I, we've been covering college football for a long time. You've seen the quarterbacks who get the ball there and their receivers bail them out, but they're getting tackled, falling down as soon as they catch it, because it wasn't a great throw, even though it got there. That's not Kane Archer.
Yeah, sometimes, you know what? He has the arm strength to drill it in there or run out of the pocket and make throw a dime with a little bit of touch and all that. Sometimes it doesn't really matter what it is. You just got to make movements. You got to make plays with your feet first. And I know this is an old saying, but Nick Saban used to say, I don't care if a drive ends on a punt, a field goal, or an extra point. Just don't turn it over. He gives me that sense too, because of his mobility. He knows he can get out of plays. He needs to be a little more secure with the football when guys are around him. You'll find out real quick at the college level, the ball will be on the ground. But I don't see anything about his mobility that makes me think that he's not going to be impactful pretty quickly. And I'm not saying he's going to walk into UCF and start. That's a little ridiculous, but I bet he goes in there and he's on the top 3 of the depth chart really quick, because he has traits that you can't teach. And again, back to your point, ball placement. No quarterback coach like Scott, who played the position in Nebraska, is going to be looking at him and saying, well, he can't throw it. I mean, any idiot can figure that out. So Frost is going to probably try to find a way to push the pile and see if he can beat somebody out next year. It would not be surprising if he played to me.
Yeah, look, I think it's safe to say that Kane Archer is a good fit for what Scott Frost and McKenzie Milton are going to want to do. But how good a fit is this young man? We'll talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Wayfair. The days are getting longer, the weather's warming up, and people are spending more time outside, which means it's the perfect time to refresh your outdoor space. Whether you're working with a big backyard or a small balcony, Wayfair has everything you need to make it feel more like you. Wayfair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy space into your ideal summer setup, guys. From comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor, they've got it all, and at prices that fit your budget. Look, you can a new patio set, dining set, string lights from Wayfair to help extend your outdoor space. I love the mix of styles that they offer, which is why I shop at Wayfair. Shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture online this summer. Get outside with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home, Wayfair. How good a fit is Kane Archer for what Scott Frost and McKenzie Milton want to do offensively? There's a lot of misconception. You talked about the RPO in our last segment, and I think there's some misconception by the average fan about what the RPO is. Meaning, hey, I've got to be able to be a gang buster running the ball for the RPO to work. And that's not necessarily true. You just need to be a threat to run the ball so that defenses can respect it. I think that Kane Archer showed that he's enough of a threat running the ball that defenses have to respect his ability to be able to run it. And if you are no threat, the RPO doesn't work all that well. If their system is designed for the running back to keep the ball a good portion of the time, talk to me about what Scott Frost has done traditionally and how Kane Archer fits into that.
It's pretty much what you said. He's not going to force it. But let's just utilize McKenzie Milton, quarterback coach, ironically. He was as good a magician in the moment as any quarterback in the last 20 years of college football. And I'm not saying that because we're on a UCF pod. Like, he did some stuff that was funky, and it would score points.
Yeah.
You don't coach it. You can't. Part of the time you're like, don't do. Oh, okay. He's one of those guys. The guy in the gym that don't shoot. Oh, okay. He's that special shooter. McKenzie Milton was kind of like that. And at the high school level, at least, and again, I know it's Arkansas, he makes kids look pretty dumb in the moment. And I think that's why they'll probably be pretty aggressive with it once he's the starter, because he can do things outside the tackle box, running or passing, that some other quarterbacks just physically can't do. Scott has done a good job of adjusting. Now, he's had some guys that are a little more pocket-oriented, and he can spin it, but it's always that extra card in your hand on third and especially fourth down. Get the guy – they talk about it all the time, 2-point plays. Right-handed quarterback, you put the ball in the left hash, you roll him. You know what's coming, but he's got more space to work with.
Yeah.
The math just works out. Those kinds of plays for Archer, I think that UCF will be able to do a lot of different trick plays and stuff off of it, double passes or anything else they want, but it starts with just the bread and butter fake. If that defensive end crashes and he gets on the edge, he still might throw it because he's such a good athlete, like we were talking earlier, off platform. Archer is quite capable of making a throw that most guys wouldn't try because they're not very accurate. He might pull up right before the line of scrimmage and take a shot down the field that other guys, Frost may not want him to do that. Just go ahead and get your 8 yards and let's move on with the next play. This is a kid that can make that play. And it's why McKenzie Milton was so famous, because he would do stuff like that out of the blue, and you'd be like, I don't know if this is going to work out. And then 3 seconds later, there's a guy in the clear for UCF. Like, there's a moxie to it that is very difficult to understand, and it puts defenses in flux. So anybody that can get on the edge like that, I think Frost has done a good job in the past. So why would you not expect it to work in the future? This is a great fit for the big play opportunities that the UCF offense could have. Continuing with the theme of great fit, it's important because this is his first recruiting class, and this is his guy. This is the guy that they chose. Now, Scott Frost is going to have to work with a mix of guys from the portal, guys who were developed in large part elsewhere, and that he's hoping will fit his system. Kane Archer is those guys. I think for staff, Brian, is they've got to evaluate better than their peers in the first few years until they can get proof of concept, put a little money behind it, and start to close that talent gap between UCF and the top of the Big 12. Because, at the end of the day, you're not going to outdevelop BYU and Colorado and some of these other schools that are recruiting at a higher level than you right now. You need dogs, man. You need guys who are just better than other kids. And in the beginning, you get the guys that you can. And I'm not saying that Kane Archer isn't a top-class quarterback. Yeah.
at the end of the day, we may be looking back at this 2 years from now and saying the guys who do the rankings just missed. And you know how it is, man. Like, they're prospects that fly under the radar. There are over 3 million kids playing high school football in this country. It's very, very difficult to rate them all. And so, I just think this is where they have to show, as a coaching staff, we have to build the eye and the ability to go out and find the guys that everybody else is missing and be superior to those kids to the max of their potential, get the most out of them. And when they see that happening from the high school level, when the boosts see that happening, the money starts to flow in. Now you can go out and you can compete for higher tier guys. And then by year 3 or 4, we're looking back on this and we're like, UCF has closed the talent gap between them and the rest of the league.
Yeah, this is a key class, though, because it sets the tone for what you want to do. Obviously, you want your quarterback to hit. And I think that UCF overall, they've got to get better in the trenches through the high school ranks on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I agree.
They got a long way to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Like the numbers that you need, the size, all of it. Like they need more of all of these categories in abundance. I'm not telling UCF fans something they don't know, but the depth to play at the P4 level, you look at the teams that fade. You can use the Big 12 if you want, or whatever conference. If you look at the last 4 games, you and I, like, we live close to Auburn. Like, even Auburn, and they recruit D-line pretty well. End of the season, there are a lot of years Auburn's a little short. BYU, they got $1 gazillion in NIL. Oklahoma State, $1 gazillion. That guy for Texas Tech doesn't care. He's got like 3 companies. He's a multi-billionaire. They don't care. If you don't find a way to get some of those kids, great getting Kane Archer, but you got to block for the guy.
Yeah.
So hopefully him coming in will attract, especially offensive line for Kane. But if you don't get those guys, you can't get over the hump. You said it already. You got to have dogs. And I don't know how many times Kirby Smart has talked about this, but he's like, we spend as much time as we do on recruiting because the better players win. He always says that kind of stuff. And like, Kirby can coach football, but he's not a moron.
Yeah.
He knows that the better player is going to win about 9 out of 10 times. Bobby Bowden used to say that all the time. He did okay. So it's the same thing. UCF's got to up its recruiting game. And I say this every time I come on your show. There's no shortcut here. You all boosters out there got to get in your wallets or it's not going to get over the top.
Yeah. Once they hit that wall, I think there needs to be an adjustment of expectations based on the investment into the program, right? If you want 100%. Him to consistently beat the top of the league, then he needs the resources to go out and get the kids that can compete with the top of the league. We see this, outside of UCF, you and I both cover the SEC quite a bit, and right? Like at the top of that league, now that Saban's gone, Texas and Georgia are the class of recruiting in that league. If you want to catch up to them, you've got to spend money. You've got to spend money. I know that Scott Frost understands the game that he's in. My hope is that the people around him understand what he needs and to get him what he needs to continue to do it. Guys like Kane Archer are the start. And, if Kane is a success, if he could do that because Kane said, I have not talked to UCF about money. He said, I don't care about, he said, Mike, if I play well, the money will take care of itself. As soon as he said that, Brian, I love this kid. Let's get him in, right? Because that's you need guys who just want to play ball, who believe that he's not Kane Archer is a kid that's not going to be distracted once you get him the money, right? He's not going to go out and do dumb stuff and get in trouble with the money. You know how it is, man. You give young kids money and they find trouble to get into, right? Yeah, he's not going to do that. He's focused on playing football. And if you give Scott Frost the money, he can go out and find the Kane Archers of the world still, right? But go get those 5-star linemen that he needs that will the talent gap always shows up when you get to your conference championship game or you get to the playoffs. I believe this strongly. Arizona State was picked to finish last in the Big 12, Brian. Last. They won the whole thing, and they gave us probably the most entertaining playoff game we saw the entire college football playoffs, them in Texas. But you know what showed up at the end of that game? Recruiting. Recruiting showed up. Quinn Ewers made the plays that they needed to make at the very end to get them just over the top. And then Kenny Dillingham got in front of a microphone and told the world, he said he wanted to celebrate the season they had, but he said, give us money if you want to see more of this. He knows what they did last year is not sustainable without the money.
Arizona State, for those who don't know, and I'm very surprised by this because Phoenix has got a lot of old Chicago money and it's got a lot of money from LA, etc. They don't have that major donor. So that's what he was referring to. And he's an Arizona State grad. So it means a lot to Dillingham. And I think they did a great job last year. But they hit the inside straight getting Cam Scatterboot. I mean, the dude was at Sacramento State. You're never going to get that again. So they know to be back in contention, to even be in the top 4, because Texas Tech and Baylor and TCU and Oklahoma State and BYU, a bunch of those schools are going to kick their tail in NIL negotiations.
Yeah.
And that's the same spot that UCF is in. I don't see Cam Scatterboot's twin brother hanging out at UCF and stuff.
Yeah, it's like hitting the lottery when you find a Cam Scatterboot the way that Arizona State did. I mean, think about RJ Harvey, how good he was last year.
Oh, he was a dude. Yeah.
The top 10 running backs in the country in yards gained from the line of scrimmage rushing. He had the least amount of carries. I think at 202 carries of any of them, but the only person in the country that averaged more yards per carry than RJ Harvey at 6.8 was Ashton Genty at 7 yards per carry. RJ Harvey was a dude. If he had gotten the 100 more carries or 150 more carries that Ashton Genty got, in the 2,000-yard back last season. So, if you want to continue to get these kind of kids in here, I think there's going to be kind of there's a middle ground, right, for Frost. I don't think UCF is going to have Texas money or Ohio State money in recruiting. But, if they can get somewhere in between, then you got to lean on Scott Frost and McKenzie's ability to be able to evaluate at a higher level. And you take the mix of the two and you field a squad. Look, the playoff has opened up the opportunity for teams like UCF to get in there. And once you get in there, anything can happen, Brian. I don't have to be better than you regularly. I just have to be better than you that day 4 times, and I can be a national champion now. So, there were a lot of people when NIL came in, they said, oh, these big schools are going to hate this because even the playing field. I said, no, it's not. If anything, it's going to make it more uneven because those guys are all the guys with the money, right? They can afford to throw more money around than you. And I hate it because I want kids to get paid, but I also want the quality of what we're watching to stay good. I still want to see the little guy compete. And UCF, they're not really a little guy because, if you look at the enrollment there, it's not a small school, right? They just don't have the history and that some of these like of Alabama, but they're creating their history as we speak. RJ Harvey was taken in the 2nd round in 10 years. I say this all the time. Nobody cares what Notre Dame did in the 50s and 60s, man. Nobody cares, right? They care what you're doing right now. And if you're UCF, what you can do right now is you can put the world on notice that you're not going to be able to ignore us now that we've got our coach and we're starting to put some money. And once we get a little bit of momentum, watch out, right? So I think that it's going to be fun to watch this. Is Kane Archer the start of that pipeline? I know you'll be giving me your opinion every single step of the way. Brian Smith, I want to thank you for joining me today. Before we get out of here, as always, tell people where they can find you.
Absolutely. The Portal Podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, SportsSpider, anywhere you get your pods. You download them, take it with you on the go. We are always free and available.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of Locked On UCF. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day. For your next listen, go check out Locked On Big 12 or Locked On the Portal. You can find them on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can find us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.